Hello, everybody. Welcome to KFC SuperCoach TV, leading into round 15. And, SuperCoach is fun, isn't it, Phantom? We have the trickiest buy round right in front of us now, and we can't avoid it. And I think our social media editor just pointed out to me before we came on, he's actually having a very good year, just quietly. He's ranked ahead of me in KFC SuperCoach. That 7 of the top 10 scorers in the game are not playing this week due to the bye. I'm not sure if he counted Clayton Oliver and James Sicily in that because they're not playing either for other various reasons. So it does make it tricky, but we're all in the same boat. How are you feeling leading into this week? And I suppose the question everyone's getting asked is, how many players do you reckon you can actually field? We have best 18 scoring rules for the buys, but we're going to need every single one of those this week.
Hello, Al, and it's probably it's worked out well. They've only got 2 of us here this week. There's limited numbers on the field, limited numbers.
Yeah, that's right.
SuperCoach TV, Clayton Oliver news, obviously not ideal. It's turned into, well, it was looking like a pretty good hold. It looked like the right call when Simon Goodwin said post-match, quote, he will play on the King's birthday clash before, which no one would have predicted or could have predicted the infected blister that obviously popped up a few days later. So that hurts this week. You can't trade him out now unless we get something more from the Demons. So that hurts the numbers. But I think I'll still have 20 this week. I took a bit of a hit last couple of weeks, I should say. But again, as I learnt last week firsthand, that it's quality over quantity still wins in KFC SuperCoach during the buy rounds. I had 20 or 21 last week with a few rookies at the end, still struggled to score. You get even close to you and a few others who might have had 1 or 2 players less. So all about getting your premiums right, I think. So if you can bring another 1 or 2 in this week and it works to your overall plan, then do so. But plenty to talk about, plenty of questions, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I guess one to address straight off the top is, I think a few people will be in this boat. Mick's saying maybe the AFL just call it off. But, in KFC SuperCoach, especially, I guess, if you're only, your focus is on your private leagues and making the finals at the end of the year, is there, is it a valid strategy to just effectively throw one of the buy rounds and say, rather than, doing some kind of mad scramble, using all your trades just to try and get 18 or as close as you can this week, you just cop the hit and move on?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And we've spoken about this in the past as well, especially for league purposes. And again, if making 1 or 2 rash trades just to field 18 or 19 this week might come back to bite. You could end up losing more points in the long run than you gain this week on someone in the overall sense. Because if you're not trading this week to work towards your long-term goal, which is that complete team, given what we've been hit with this year, given trade counts around the place, given cash balances around the place are pretty low, we can't afford to sort of make many sidewaysy or just sort of short-term moves at this point of the year. And speaking from my point of view as well, given my trade counts, but a lot of KFC SuperCoaches out there would be in a similar boat. So again, think longer term. If you're making a trade this week, does it help you get to where you want to go over the next few weeks? And then for the run home, 24 rounds this year, so still plenty of footy to go. Look where you've dropped or where you've risen in the first half of the year can happen again, and maybe even more dramatically with when people do run out of trades.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting race to the finish line, and I absolutely agree with that. That bringing in, especially if it's a rookie type player this week who might not score that many points, you might get an extra 40 or 50 in one round, and then if it, that trade could be worth so much more in the long run. If you've run out of trades and one of your top primos gets injured and you can't really do anything about it, that's going to cost you a lot more points than that in those final few rounds. And Mick's saying here, he's focusing on the head-to-head. And if we talked about before the buys that you sort of try and view them all as a 4-week, unfortunately this year 4-week block. And rather than getting too hung up on each individual round, because some players had I'm looking in pretty decent shape this week, but I had a bit of a shocker in round 12. Other people scored much better in that round, but this is the week they're sort of going to cop it. So you sort of judge where you are at the end as opposed to where you were 4 weeks ago. But it's hard when you're staring at your team and you're seeing all those blue dots and then players who aren't even struggling to potentially get selected this week. So it does make it tricky. I mean, Clayton Oliver's I really feel for people who hang on to him because, based on his durability in the past, I think that was a sensible move, rather than using a couple of trades to maybe try and get him back some other, after the buys, because we knew he's someone we're going to want in our finished teams. And if you already got him, that's the smart play is to just hang on to him, especially if you think you can cover during best 18 weeks. But as you say, no one could have seen what happened next. And if he did just have that hamstring, he probably would have been back. So I think it was the right call. But now you're in that situation. And I think, Phantom, you're one of these very unlucky players. Can you potentially, are you still hanging on to him, hoping he's back next week, or you just sort of cut your losses to, as we say, to get 18 on the field this week?
Oh, we've come this far. I think unless we get, there was a tweet floating around earlier today about Oliver going for more scans, precautionary.
Oh, jeez.
He was, I think, Sammy Emmett on SEN. D's hopefully they're clear. But so if we do hear something more this afternoon or pre-game, then that could change strategies a bit. But I think you have to hold now. If you've kept him, you couldn't trade him now. He's back next week, comes out and scores 150, which is likely could happen. You'd be kicking yourself even more than you are now. So I think as hard as it is, you have to hold. And if it means you've only got 17, then I think you probably take the hit, unless, of course, you are flush with trades. Yes,
some people might be in that lucky position. I mean, what about for someone like me who had planned all the way through to bring Oliver in after Melbourne's bye for this round and had the trade sort of lined up to do it? And originally that was going to be Harry Sheasel, swing Jordan Dawson back and bring in Clayton Oliver, and that whole plan's out the window with Sheasel actually finding a bit of form in the last couple of weeks, and now James Sicily missing through suspension. So I suppose it's an easy swap to trade him instead. And I mean, should I wait? I've got 18 this week, actually. 19, would be an absolute bonus. Would you reckon wait a week and, stick to that plan and get Oliver, or just get Petrarca now, whose average is fairly similar? You get one extra game out of him, and potentially allows me to make a bit of a jump this week.
Yeah, I think I don't mind the idea of Petrarca there. As you said, the extra game helps here and could keep him in front in that race for total points against Clary Oliver. I wrote earlier this week too, Oliver's expensive still. His prices hover between 700 and 650K for the whole year. It's not going to come down any further. So, if you were targeting Oliver, it's worth considering Noah Anderson's of the world, 556K or thereabouts, or look for another position when you've got your Jordan Ridleys in defence, just to name a couple of guys.
Darcy Cameron.
And if you can use that extra 100, 120K, if it brings on your next upgrade quicker, then that's worth considering. And you don't want to compromise too much or settle for a premium in this case. But with those names, Noah Anderson, Ridley, maybe Cameron's on that next run, but especially Anderson, really, I don't think you're going to compromise too much on total points, especially if you can get another premium quicker. But if you do have a few more trades then you sort of can afford to wait. But in my case, I just couldn't get Oliver if I didn't have him at the moment. If I was in your spot right now, I'm low on cash, low on trades. If I spent the bank on Oliver and my trades, then I'd still have to run a Bailey Humphrey and Nat Fyfe on my field. So I'd rather not do that. So again, we don't want to settle for premiums, but I think there's a couple of guys you wouldn't compromise too much on points. And Scott asked here about what number would flush with trades mean at this stage of the year. I think if you've got 10 after your moves this week, then you're looking pretty good. But it all depends as well on where your team is at. So, if Scott has 10 trades, but he's still got 3 spots to fill, and someone else pops up with 8 trades and they're full premium, then obviously, or 7 trades and they're full premium, they're in a better spot, you'd think, depending on what they've got on the bench. So it is pretty team dependent, but double figures after your moves this week would be have you sitting pretty good, I reckon.
And how low do you reckon you can go if you are full premium, and maybe that's, still with a Sheasel or someone like that who's, scoring well enough that I think you can count him as your last defender or your last forward? How many trades would you feel comfortable going forward with? I'm hearing some pretty low numbers out there.
Yeah, I'm going to go pretty low. I think obviously taking a few hits this year. I'll probably be trying to carry 3 personally with a complete team. That's with maybe and that 5, maybe a Rory Atkins or someone like that. A couple of floaters still on the bench. Obviously, Darcy Cameron to cover in the ruck if something happens there too. So it would be pretty thin. Ideally, I think working off in the past, if you've got 5 or 6, that's ideal as well. And keep in mind your league games as well. If you're really focused on your leagues, having 1 or 2 trades going into the KFC SuperCoach finals, especially deeper into those finals too, could be the difference between winning the grand final and losing it when someone's limped over the line and you've got a couple of moves to trade out a premium that's going to miss, or even a luxury trade from an underperformer. So again, as Abdul, everyone's favourite top 5 SuperCoach from last year went, I know you'll be able to correct me, but went tradeless for the last couple of months of the season. And
7 or 8 rounds
somehow. So you can do it. So I'll be doing it with 3. I'd like to have 5 or 6, just not going to happen.
Yeah, I think I'll get down to about 5, but it'll be a bit of a weird situation because I'll still have probably my, if we're counting Sheasel as a premium, my last, I'll still have 1 rookie left, and that'll be Ashcroft, who is, again, scoring at almost, you'd rather have a Noah Anderson or someone in that spot, but it's not a total disaster, especially with their draw coming up. Actually looks okay. But, having 5 trades, I think, is in a decent situation compared to quite a few people. But the problem I'm going to have is my bench will be terrible. And there's, I can't really see how I'm going to get, 100K to turn Ashcroft into anybody because, I'll have, Brian Marich on the bench. Is he going to go up 150K in the next month? Seems unlikely. And, then you've got all your Blake Drury and Charlie Constable, Campbell Chester types as well. So even though I might look a little bit healthier with those extra trades, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to use them that well. And we just might be in a better spot if we do get a bunch of injuries. But as you say, hopefully they don't. They don't happen and we can sail through. Now, I've got an interesting commenter who's been logged on here who does look familiar. He's not that happy about us calling Abdul everyone's top 5 favourite top 5 finisher last year. I remember the guy who won, JP. He was a pretty good bloke as well. So we don't want to have favourites.
No, and JP top 5 Abdul from last year, obviously. So a favourite finisher in the top 5 named right. Abdul. So I think JP commented a little bit earlier as well, asking for some more trades. There you can see it down below. So give us an update of how many trades you do have left and where you're at, because as it shows, KFC SuperCoach, you can hit anyone. As we know, last year's winner having a few struggles by the sounds of it this season. So we're all in it together, round 15 by, and we're all in it together every year. But our Kieran Briggs, I think, a couple of questions on him.
Yes, yeah, we did.
Talking about making money, that's one I did overlook, which is hurting me now. What do we do? If you've got him, do you keep him? Is he a keep it on the field? Do you trade him and cash him in now? What do you think?
Well, I've got him as my second ruck. I was in one of those weird things, the way the cards just fall sometimes in KFC SuperCoach, that when I saw Sean Darcy go down with a hamstring, I thought, you're kidding me. Like coming into the buys, how unlucky can you get? And then Kieran Briggs just presented on the bubble that same week. So I made the straight swap and, couldn't have gone any better. Though people who've done that, it's just worked out so well. What I thought could happen has happened in that, originally I thought, well, I'll just keep Briggs for a few weeks and then trade him out on his buy, and he will have made a heap of money and I can use him to get in a top-line ruckman, and Darcy might be back this week. But as I thought I might do, I've actually gone and spent all the money that I made from that trade, so that's all gone. So I can't really do anything apart from keep Briggs, but the way he's scoring, I'm actually really happy with that. So I think ideally, we've had a couple of questions about Darcy Cameron as well, and I think I would like to bring him in probably in my forward line if I can. He's very cheap at 460,000, and that just gives me a little bit of protection because, Briggs is scoring out of this world, but it is the first time he's ever done it, and we've seen in the past rucks who've come onto the scene and scored really well haven't really been able to keep it up, but, he's maybe a different type of player because he doesn't really rely on hit-outs to necessarily score from, although his hit-out to advantage rate is very good, but he lays a lot of tackles and wins contested ball and things like that, which is great for KFC SuperCoach. So if you've got him at R2, I think happy to keep him there, maybe with a bit of protection if you can. If you have him on your bench, now you've got a lot of people have Marshall and English and then Briggs. And probably between the three, if you had the choice, a lot of people I think would be happy to keep English and Briggs as their top rucks and trade out Marshall. But the problem is Marshall's playing this week and the other two aren't. So it makes it very difficult. But I think in that case, you can trade him. Like, he's still going to go up more potentially. He's got a break even around 30, I think. But after his bye, he runs into Gawn and Grundy. So might find the going a little bit tougher there. And that money is just so valuable for a guy who's not playing this week. I think if you can if you can trade him down to what's his name, Nick Madden type, 102K forward ruck on your ruck bench, make, nearly 300 grand out of it, and maybe get a Darcy Cameron in your forward line as cover, and you'll have heaps of money left over to, upgrade a George Wardlaw or something like that. So, if I was in that position, I think I would trade out Briggs, but given that I'm using him as one of my starting rucks, I'm going to hang on to him.
Yep, I agree, especially as we've discussed at the top. Premium counts are pretty low this week. So if you can get a couple in this week as a result of that trade, that helps you complete your team. It could help you big time this year. But I've got a lot of questions this week about Briggs or Marshall, and Briggs is 3 to 5 round averages are both second to Tim English. But in the past 5 games, Briggs has only scored 18 more points than Rowan Marshall. Marshall had a couple.
Yeah, I think
games,
Marshall's going
ones.
fine. I'm a bit perplexed by why people are really turning off him.
And again, like you said, you've got one extra Marshall game as well going forward. So if I had him on the bench, I'd look to cash in, really improve my side elsewhere, fast track those last couple of upgrades, and put out a better team this week than a lot of KFC SuperCoaches out there.
Yeah, I agree with that. Quickly go through a couple of other players that people have mentioned here. I mean, this sort of applies to a lot of those bench. I've got I think I got rid of Sharp actually, but I've got plenty more in that same situation. But yeah, there's plenty of these sitting on people's benches. How would you feel about using a trade to trade someone like him, or finally get rid of a Matt Roberts or a player like that to bring in a cheapie who's at least playing this week and might give you some cover, an extra number this week and maybe some cover going forward. But unfortunately, there aren't that many that are cheaper than Harry Sharp. If you can find an extra 30, 40 grand, there's a few options out there.
Yeah, I did it last week in a similar thing, Alan Davey to Jack Buller. Obviously, Jack Buller didn't work out, but it was more about the money that I needed to execute the trade plan. So if Harry Sharp to Ryan Marrick this week, you bank 59K, and that's the difference between making an upgrade and not, and then it works. And of course, you get the extra number this week as well. But I wouldn't just do it just for the number.
Yeah, there's another question earlier about trading forward to Marriage, which seems like that was the first trade I made this week, and seems I can't find it now, but seems a bit of a no-brainer to cash in that money. Ford has had a few good weeks. He only scored 30 last week, so you would only want him as bench cover going forward. But again, it might just depend on your individual team, and maybe you'd rather keep Ford and trade Wardlaw because you want a midfielder. But I mean, Marriage is the cheapest rookie out there. We'll wait and see the teams tonight, but we assume he'll get picked again for West Coast, and can't really see him dropping out of that team with all the injuries they've got. And he was pretty good in his first game. So yeah, just the way to make the most possible money. And it does give us an extra head count this week, even though I wouldn't be expecting a heap from him. Bailey's asked this a couple of times. Who would you prefer in your defence? I know a couple of our colleagues, Tim and Dan, are both potentially bringing in Elliot Yeo this week. He's 399K, scored hundreds in his last 2 games. We know he can do that, but obviously huge risk. And Ryan is an interesting one because started the year so well, and his last sort of 5 or 6 weeks haven't been so great. But he got a ton last week, and there was an interesting move in the last quarter where Justin Longmuir moved Hayden Young into the centre square, took a few centre bounces, which if that goes on going forward, you'd think that helps Luke Ryan's scoring. But, can we trust Justin Longmuir to, is that a long-term move or just something he threw out there when they were trailing by 10 goals in the last quarter?
Yeah, I think he's mentioned before, and Young's expressed his desires to longer term to maybe play in the midfield. I think he's got some traits that can definitely work in there, but I think we might have been more potentially just to try something else, given what they were doing was not working. And I sat in the office on Saturday. If you read Burning Questions, you'll know my frustration. Sat there with the hipster, discussed Luke Ryan at length. Hipster brought him in after his huge run of early form, and he brought him at the time when Freo sort of changed the way they were playing a little bit. They went more by hand, a lot more quicker out of defence after that heavy whole possession style. Didn't really work for them in the early few rounds, and that's when Luke Ryan got a lot of ball when they were sharing it around a bit more. So obviously a very good defender as well, one-on-one. So again, what we've seen in the last 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks, a couple of tons, a few below that, is what we've seen last year, over the last 18 months with Luke Ryan as well. So good price, but I reckon I'd much prefer Jordan Ridley this week if you don't have him. Elliot Yeo, I'm not sure. Our 399K, we spoke about him at length over the preseason, how much value he was at a cheaper price. He's scoring well again. We know he's a good footballer up and going, but yeah, can you trust him? I don't have an answer for you. I'm not going to go there. I can't afford anything else to happen. But again, it's been a year when you need to take risks like this. So I don't mind it, especially if you can then use the extra money, Bailey, here. So just say you can use the extra 100K to make an upgrade quicker rather than wait 2 or 3 weeks for someone else to make money, then that could be the clinching factor.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a bit of a roll of the dice. I mean, sometimes these can work out. I remember picking, I mean, it's happened with a few different players. One that comes to mind in recent years is someone like a Joe Danaher, who had heaps of injuries, and picked him at the start of the year thinking, look, if he can just get through 5 or 6 games, make me some money, I'll take that. And then he basically played every game for the season. So who knows? We all hope Elliott gets a clear run at it. And if he does, I think he'll actually score pretty well. The Eagles have some defenders maybe coming back in if they can not get injured again, and that might give him some more time in the midfield. So, it could work, but it's just incredibly risky. And you wouldn't want to do it if you've only got 3 or 4 trades left, because there's every chance you might have to use another one on him, and then maybe even 2, because what if he gets injured in 2 weeks' time? He hasn't really gone up in money. You'd want to be able to find some money from somewhere else to turn him into an actual premium. So, it's definitely risky, but I mean, I hope it works for the people who are trying it out. Quick one, Mick's asked a couple of questions, but I know you're a big fan of Angus Sheldrick. He scored about 70 points in 1 quarter last week and almost spent half the rest of the game on the bench. So where does that leave us is he someone we can actually rely on as a, 190K, as a sort of a slightly more expensive rookie?
Yeah, it's a hard one. John Longmire quoted yesterday, I believe, on Wednesday, and said how happy he was with Sheldrick, and in particular his attack on the ball and how tough he is when he's out there, I think was part of the quote as well. So obviously maybe pointing to what we saw on the weekend, that he doesn't have the tank yet to run out anywhere near a full game through the midfield at the top level. So that, I guess, is a concern. I think, as our rookie expert Dan Batten pointed out, who equally he loves Angus Sheldrick as a player, has for a couple of years, but again, he needs to play really well. Is he going to have a quarter like that every week? That's going to allow him to score your 80 plus in that game time, or over a 10-week period, does the game time weigh him down? Probably that. You probably say it does. So Marcus Winhager, 12K more. Another one that's who I'm weighing up this week, Sheldrick or Winhager. And maybe it is Winhager, a bit more AFL time, shown he can stand up a little bit more last year in his first season. I predicted big things from him over the preseason. Obviously, it didn't work out. Preseason injury hurt him as well. He was very good in the wet last week as well. So maybe it's him just over Sheldrick. But again, if either of them get you enough money to get to where you want to go with the other trade, then bring them in over a Harvey Harrison or Marek or a Buller, or then you're going to be more confident with them on the field this week, and then more confident with them as cover in the run home, especially if you're a bit shorter on trades.
Yeah, I mean, the other factor that might help Windhager too is that Jack Steele clearly carrying something. I'm just trying to find what Ross Lyon said about him yesterday, and I think they don't want to have to rest him, but maybe they will at some point.
Poor bloke. Jeez, he needs the rest, doesn't he? Put him out, Ross. I know it's bad for the KFC SuperCoaches who have him out there, but struggling big time, soldiering on. But I guess they have to ask the question: Is it helping the team? Is it? Maybe it's not. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you brought him in, that's just really rough. He's clearly a shadow of the player we know he can be. I think he'll definitely pencil him in for a cheap price if he's available next year to start the season.
Yeah, just quickly on this one from Solomon, we're talking about Ridley and Yo. Redmond looks a better option. Obviously, some value there, but Ridley now gone 4 KFC SuperCoach tons on the trot since that concussion. And Fantasy Freako shared some numbers during the week, and of all defenders playing this week, so that you take out the bye, you take out James Sicily too, Ridley's SuperCoach scoring from round 9 is second only to Nick Dacos, so he's ahead of Tom Stewart during that period as well. So great buying, I think. Jordan Ridley 502 is getting a bit more freedom, I think, at the moment in that Bombers side than what he was last year and maybe even earlier in the season. So I think Tim Mitchell also told me 48 of his past 50 kicks have been effective as well. So all points to good KFC SuperCoach numbers. I like Ridley over Redmond.
Yeah, I'm bringing in Ridley, I think, this weekend. I'm a little bit nervous, just wary that his role has changed over the course of the year, and hopefully it doesn't go back to playing more one-on-one defence. And some of those really big scores came against West Coast, and then I think against Richmond, which was the Richmond players just kept kicking it to him. It was so bad that Damien Hardwick quit. So he's been more sort of in the low 100s the last couple of weeks. But, yeah, he looks pretty solid pick, especially at that price. Quick one here from Aaron. This is a very similar situation to me. And, I had Chincotta as well, debating what to do with him. And I don't think he's the worst option to hang on to as bench cover. I think he should keep playing. He's been going all right for Carlton, but sort of 60 seems about as high as he can go. So I certainly wouldn't be using him to, cover for a Sicily or something like that. He's just bench cover at best. And the way I've managed to work this is because, again, similar to Aaron, I'd be very nervous about just having Chesser and Constable as my defensive bench cover in case you do get an injury or, laid out at some stage. But I've been able to hang on to Jordan Dawson in my midfield. So with those two guys both being DPP, hopefully that means at least if I get word during the week that Nick Dacos is out for one game or something, I can at least move some DPPs and get Dawson back there to help cover just for that 1 week. And then you've got maybe some better bench options in the midfield to bring on to cover there. So, DPPs can be very, very useful from this point on in the season. And I think Chincotta can definitely go if that money can help you out. It's just there's not really many downgrades in defence to help you there. So whether you can upgrade him to someone good like a Ridley or potentially, Yo, I guess, isn't that far price-wise, or what sort of I'm doing is trading him out, moving a Constable type back to my defensive bench, and then I can bring in a midfielder. So that's what I'm doing. But, I don't think he's the worst option to hang on to him. But if you can use the money somehow to improve your team, I think that's a good way to go. Getting close to the half-hour mark, we've got to talk some captains, which is going to be huge this week with lower numbers. If we get the captaincy right, it's going to make a big difference. It's Friday night, the footy is on, and your KFC Friday night feast is on its way. Score free delivery on your Friday night footy feast every Friday when ordering through the KFC app or kfc.com.au. It's game on. Phantom, who can we put the captaincy on this week, starting tonight potentially with a big Thursday night game?
Oh, looking forward to some spicy chicken tonight, I reckon. Now it's very cold over here in Adelaide, so definitely have it in front of the TV. Tom Stewart, VC last week over here in Adelaide didn't work. Still an option again, I think, down there against the Ds. I'll consider him as VC, but again, otherwise you can go back to one of your Brisbane boys, I think, on Friday night, Saints and the Lions at Marvel Stadium. Marcus Winhager, maybe does he go to Lachie Neale potentially? Probably, I reckon that's where they lean. Although he's a very good matchup for Josh Dunkley too in terms of body shape and the way they move. But you could go VC on one of those two. In terms of captain, I'm just not really sure. Obviously, as you mentioned at the top, a lot of the big names are out this week. No Clary Clayton Oliver back in either. So Rory Laird against the Pies at the MCG on Sunday. Should be a really good game. We know Laird has scored well against Collingwood in the past. Big game. Jordan Dawson as well. Can he stand up and get the Crows a win away from home? So I think I'd be worried maybe potentially a little bit about Nick Dacos if Ben Keays does go to him again. I'd like to VC him, but whether you fall back on him as captain is a different story. So again, I'm probably looking at maybe I'm not sure. As you can tell, I'm a bit stumped, but your Tom Stewart, Josh Dunkley, Rory Laird are the three names. Whether I go with Tom Stewart VC tonight, I'm still weighing it up.
Yeah, I think Windhager did play on Lockie Neal last year, but as you say, Dunkley's another option there as a tag. But just given his high just consistency over the last 5 or 6 weeks, he hasn't scored below about 130. So I think he's a pretty safe bet as a VC at least. Sydney, West Coast, I mean, Errol Goulden maybe. Joe, I know Tim is very keen on Jake Lloyd mopping up a heap of ball against the Eagles. So there's a possibility, but certainly only as a VC. You got Zach Merritt or an Andy Brayshaw type. That game's really hard to pick. I'm not sure where it's going to land. Could I just put the VC? I do like Laird, I must say. He's probably going to be my fullback captain because even if he has a, sort of just an average game, that should be 100, 110 from him. And he scored really well against Collingwood in the past and they don't really tag. So I think he'll go all right. Could I put the VC straight on Christian Petrarca? If I bring him in tonight, it was supposed to be Oliver, but now Track is a laid in for my team. So is he a captaincy option against a pretty weakened midfield down at the Cattery? Yep,
I like it. Some big numbers, below 100 last week. Christian Petrarca before that, huge. And I think he's, as it's been proven, his average is significantly higher with Clayton Oliver out the side, although they haven't obviously played without him a lot. But the small sample size. So, I don't mind that as a good VC tonight.
Yeah, might have to throw the dice on that one. Good luck, everybody out there. As we've said, it's going to be a really tough round for a lot of KFC SuperCoaches. Hopefully, we want a big score from Ryan Marich and some of these guys to really help us out because, I don't know, last week I managed to score over 2,000 in a buy round. I think my projected score this week is a lot lower than that. We're going to see a lot lower numbers around the traps. So, don't take it too hard. It's going to be a tricky one for everybody out there. And then we regroup and as you said, there's 9 rounds still to go after that. So plenty of time to make up any lost ground. And, if you have an off week this week, it's not the end of the world by any stretch. So thanks, Venom, for jumping on. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Good luck this week. Hopefully we all survive and we'll catch you on the other side.